We talk. All right. So super excited. My name is Stephen Barrett. I'm one of the panelists here at Esoteric Lighthouse, and boy, we got a special treat for you. Normally we come in on Sunday, but this is going to be a phenomenal Wednesday for you. We have a phenomenal lecture. Good friend of mine, mentor, author, all around good guy. We're not going to talk about the other organizations he's part of, but I have to put that little jab in there because I love you, sir. But what we're here right now, Esoteric Lighthouse, we're a group of free-thinking Masons who focus on the esoteric and occult teachings that is within our order. Now, one thing to let everyone know is all the views and opinions that you're about to witness here, go back and review, is a sole reflection of the panelists, and it does not reflect the membership in which they hold their allegiance to in whatever bodies, okay? So don't come back coming at anybody else's grand lodge or grand anything. This is solely Stephen Barrett and it's solely the individual. So right now I have the pleasure and honor to introduce, like I said, a friend, a mentor, author, a guy that you can call at any point, anytime, a phenomenal individual that's going to be able to deliver a phenomenal lecture here for us. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce and turn this over to past master Damien Jack, who needs no introduction, man, the myth, the legend himself. So past master Jack, the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening to the panelists of the Esoteric Lighthouse. Good evening to all who are watching. It is an honor and pleasure to be before you this evening. I am Brother Damien Jack, a proud past master of Apologetics Lodge number 7, where Brother Malcolm McClendon serves as our worshipful master. Our lodge is a constituent lodge of the auspices of the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of North Carolina, where the Honorable Daniel L. D.T. Thompson serves as our 24th most worshipful Grand Master. It's definitely an honor and pleasure to be here this evening. Brother Barrett, I thank you for the introduction. And in terms of the other organizations, just remember who the mentor is in this situation. Anyway, I'm going to do my best not to be before you long, but I do pray that the presentation that I have for you this evening will in some form or fashion enhance your Masonic journey. Past Master Williams, since I see you at this current time, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Thank you, sir. All right. So we are going to go ahead and get started. So this evening, my topic of presentation is entitled The Mind of the Heart. Once again, we are going to be discussing the mind of the heart. So I want to begin this presentation by asking this simple question. As you wake up in the morning or in the evening, depending on what your work schedule is, as you get ready to go about your daily routine and go about your day and do the things that you need to do. When you walk out the door, you get ready to go about your day, I ask you this question: are you led with your mind or with your heart? Again, are you led with your mind, meaning your brain, or are you led with your heart? When you go about making daily decisions, when you go about thinking about certain things, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, how you maneuver yourself, do you allow yourself to be led by your mind and by your heart? Now, I know many people who are watching and who are listening, and even maybe some of the panelists may be thinking, well, usually I'll be led by the mind because we have a tendency to think about the decision making. Decision making is a process of formulating resolutions within the scope of influence, choosing the best possible option. And when it comes to choosing the best possible options, first we have to think about the two most important things that it comes with this definition: the process and the influence. The process and the influence. The process is defined as a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. And the influence is the power or capacity of causing an effect in indirect or intangible ways. So what I'm asking is, what capacity causes your actions or steps when choosing the best possible option? Which capacity is it? Is it the capacity of your mind? Is it the capacity of your heart? Which one has the more influence? And so when you think about that, a lot of times many people will say it is the mind, because when it comes to the mind deals with reason and the heart deals with emotion. Reason being defined as thinking, understanding, and forming judgments by a process of logic. Emotion is a natural instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationship with others. It is also as an instinctive or intuitive feeling, as distinguished from reasoning or knowledge. Finally, it is the affective aspect of consciousness or feeling. So basically, what an emotion can be is an emotional state or reaction. We have a tendency to believe that whenever it's time to make a decision, whenever it's time for the process or what capacity we should use in order to choose the best possible option, that we should use our mind instead of our heart, because our mind deals with reason and our hearts deal with emotion. And we feel that we should take the feeling out of things when it comes to making the best possible options, making the best decisions, and going in the right direction. But as far as this presentation, I ask you to open your minds just for a little bit and just think about looking at this in a different direction and in a different point of view. First of all, in order to understand the heart, you have to know what the heart is. The heart is defined as the seat of life, emotion, reason, will, intellect, and purpose of the mind. Notice how we have both emotion and reasoning in one capacity. Also, the purpose of the mind. Did you know that when a baby is being developed and it's in this embryonic stage, that the first organ that is developed within the fetus is the heart? Something to think about. So once the heart is developed, everything is working from the inside out. And in talking about that, when we talk about the heart, did you also know that the heart has around 40,000 neurons in a network of neurotransmitters? This is about 67% of the heart cells being nerve cells. And it's the only organ that can send messages independently to the brain. Now, what you see in this picture is known as the electromagnetic field or the toroidal field. And this field is said to be 5,000 times more powerful than the brain. It is said that each individual's thoughts, attitudes, and emotions emit energetic fields. And so these individual fields, environments not only affect you, but it affects your health, your perspective on life. And they could also influence relationships, experiences, and the social field and environments as you interact with people, or even if you are merely in the same room with other people. So think about that. As soon as you walk into the room, you can feel someone's energy, but that energy is not coming from the mind. 9 times out of 10, that energy is coming from the heart, because as we see and as you just read, that field is 5,000 times more powerful than the brain. So you can go into a room and feel someone's energy. And so, if you ever meet someone and talk to someone and you wonder, I just can't, I don't vibe with this person. I don't understand. Maybe it's the type of energy that we're bringing, that they're getting, that they're giving, that they're emitting. I know I'm probably going into the principle of vibration and the principle of polarity when it comes to hermeticism, but we'll do that in another presentation. But when it comes to that, and once again, when it states that the heart is the only organ that can independently send messages to the brain, it comes to the term psychophysiological coherence. And what is that? Well, let's break the words down. The psycho or psychological is mental and emotions. Physiological is the physical body. And coherence is the systematic or logical connection. So what this is the systematic connection between the mind, the body, and emotions. And so through this, there was a series of tests done. And so what this test, what they did was they actually test a person who basically was angry, had a lot of negativity with them. And they noticed that when this person had a lot of negativity with them, their heartbeat and everything was in a different pattern. Their blood pressure was up. Everything affect them when it came to their emotions and their mental state. But they were testing the heart, and then they tested a person who had a lot of positive vibes, who had a lot of positive feelings, and noticed that when they had a lot of positive vibes and feelings, the heart, everything was level. The heartbeat, your pressure, everything about you was on a balanced and even keel. And from this, we learned that we have a tendency to think that our brain should lead our heart. But from this study, it showed that that is actually incoherence, that it's not systematic. But since systematically, your heart would be led by your brain. It is said that in their research on the physiological correlates of the positive emotions, they found that when certain positive emotional states such as appreciation, compassion, or love are intentionally maintained, coherent heart rhythm patterns can be sustained for longer periods, which also leads to increased synchronization and entertainment between multiple bodily systems because it is characterized by distinctive psychological and behavioral and correlates as well by specific patterns of physiological activity throughout the body. And it introduced the term psychophysiological coherence to describe this mode of functioning. And so with this functioning, it's basically saying that because you have these positive vibes and you can maintain these positive vibes for a long period of time, your heart rhythm stays at an even keel, and everything about you stays at an even keel. So you be led by your heart as opposed to being led by your brain. And so within the lessons of Tanya, which is the main work based on all concepts of the Shabbat Hasidism, Chabad being an acronym for the Shakma, Bana, and Dot, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And asceticism is the movement within Judaism, stressing the service of God through the mystical in addition to the legalistic dimension of Judaism. It discusses the power of joy, love of God, and one's fellow emotional involvement in prayer, finding godliness in every aspect of one's organization of existence and the elevation of the mental universe. So within the lessons of Tanya, it talks about the right heart, the right side of the heart versus the left side of the heart. And so it talks about, especially in chapter 12, it talks about the bend of knee. Now, the bend of knee is a name given to one who constantly strives in his service of God. He struggles against his selfish drives and always wins the battle. But unlike the righteous man, his evil inclination is alive and well, and he must continuously fight it. So we know that, of course, with us, we're always in that fight between the spirit and the flesh, and we're working to become the righteous man. But at this time, we're the bender knee, knowing that we have that good in us, and we're constantly striving to serve God and to be that good person and to struggle against those selfish drives, but that those evil inclinations are alive and well, and we fight against those day in and day out. And as the great light said, there's going to be some days where the flesh wins. There's going to be some days where the spirit wins. Where in chapter 12 of the lessons in Tanya, it talks about how the left part of the heart is considered the evil side, the animal soul principle and of manifestation. And the right part of the heart is the good side, where the divine soul is manifest. It says within the lessons of Tanya that contemplating God's greatness with the three intellectual faculties, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, or the Shabbat, as we talked about, arouses and diffuses the love of God in the right part of the heart. This arousal of love causes the evil of the animal soul to be nullified in the good of the divine soul, now pervading the heart. During the time of prayer, therefore, when the Benoni arouses his love of God through meditation, his animal soul is inactive and he feels no inclination for physical pleasures. So when it talks about the heart, it talks about the right side and the left side, fighting your evil side, making sure that good overcomes evil. Now, when we talk about, I bring all of this to you and talking about the heart, the definition of the heart, the energy that the heart gives off, what the lessons of Tanya says as far as the right part of the heart versus the left part of the heart, and how we should be led by our heart instead of our mind. What does all of this have to do with masonry? Well, first of all, the first and I believe the most important question throughout all of masonry is, where were you first prepared to be made a mason? And we know the answer to that question. To be prepared is to make ready beforehand for some purpose, use, or activity. So automatically, without even thinking, you automatically know the answer to this question. And the question is being, where were you first prepared? In order for you to do and understand the principles of masonry and understand the purpose of masonry, how it's going to be used in your life, and the fact that you're going to be practicing masonry, you had to first be prepared. And where were you first prepared? Doesn't say you was prepared in your mind, but you had to be prepared in your heart. As you move forward, as we know, as a part of in masonry, when you came into masonry, it states that you came into masonry an unregenerate man, and that you were groping in moral and mental darkness. Unregenerate is defined as being unrepentant or not spiritually renewed. And so understand that as we're going through the process of becoming a mason, we were supposed to become spiritually renewed in some form or fashion. The metaphysical Bible discusses the heart, and it says that the heart of the unregenerate man is both good and evil, but the evil is without foundation in being and has no sustaining power outside of man's belief in its reality. When the heart is purged of all thoughts adverse to good, man consciously contacts the underlying God substance. So when we think about that, and we understand the entered apprentice and how he's coming in, an unregenerate man groping in moral and mental darkness, what is supposed to happen through the principles and lessons of masonry is that we're supposed to purge all those thoughts that are not godlike, that are considered ungodly, that are considered evil, so that we can consciously have that God substance that is already within us. But in order to do that, we have to break off those vices and superfluities. And so when we think of that and we think about that, another important question is, how do you know yourself to be? And to me, being tried is defined as being found good, faithful, or trustworthy through experience or testing. In Psalms 139, the 23rd or 24th verse, it says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." So we know that we're going to be tried. We're going to be tested. It's one thing to say that you have changed. It's another to show by your actions that you have. And in order to show by your actions that you have, you're going to be tested. It's just like gold being tested in fire. But of course, as it says, our faith is more precious than gold. So when we say that we have changed, that we are making these change. It's one thing to say that you're doing it, but of course, through our actions, we're going to show that we're actually changed. Are you the same person that you were before you came in? And if you are, did you really change? What changes did you actually make? And in order for those to see those changes, God will test your, not only test your thoughts, but he'll also search your mind, and we'll get to that in a minute. So when we come to understanding the heart, we know that whenever we go through our ceremonies of an initiation, we're blindfolded or hoodwinked, and it is stated within Matthew 6:21 as far as being hoodwinked, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Understanding why we are, we are hoodwinked. We have to know that we want our heart to conceive before our eyes can behold the beauty of masonry. And it is said in Proverbs 2:1 and 2, my son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. Turning your ears to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. Almost sounds like the precious jewels, doesn't it? Also, when we think about speech, when we think about those arts and sciences that deals with the speech, it is said that to be an eloquent speaker is far from being either a common or easy attainment. It is the art of being persuasive and commanding, the art of not only pleasing the fancy, but appealing both to the understanding and to the heart. Psalm 19:14 says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. So we understand that first, everything so far that we're dealing with, we're not dealing with the mind first, we're dealing with the heart first. We're changing the heart first. And of course, we know to know what a man is, we've learned as Masons not to deal with the external, but to deal with the internal. And there's several ways that we deal with the internal, certain symbols that we do to deal with the internal. One deals with judgment. It says in 1 Samuel 16:7, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things that people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. He looks at the heart. When we talk about, making those changes and being changed and being tried on the things that we say that we have changed, we have to learn how to subdue our passions. That's what we came here for. And we understand there's certain working tools that talk about, removing those passions or those vices and superfluities. And when we use those working tools, we're not necessarily using them on the mind, we're using them on the heart. If you don't believe me, go back and look. It says in Mark chapter 7, verses 20-23, that he went on and said, what comes out of the person is what defiles him. What comes out of him is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. So when we know that that everything that we do comes from a person's heart, what we feel is what we tend to think. And what we feel is generally what comes out of us, which is why we look at what's the internal instead of the external. Within the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 10, it says, being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past become purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attain transcendental love for me. Taking all of those things, all of those passions out. And again, that comes from within. Psalms 51:10 says, created me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. Going back to the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verses 2 through 3, it says, the Supreme Personality of the Godhead said, O Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. O son of Pertha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Such petty weakness of heart, and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. So again, everything that we talk about, what we display on the outside is what we feel on the inside. John Calvin once said that the human heart has so many crannies where vanity hides, so many holes where falsehood works. It's so decked out with deceiving hypocrisy that it often dupes itself. The evil in our desires typically does not lie in what we want, but the fact that we want it too much. Brother Williams, that almost sounds like ambition, doesn't it? I'm sorry, I can't go that way, but we'll talk about that another time. So moving forward, another principle that we learn within in masonry is justice. It is said in 1 Corinthians 4 and 5, therefore judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes, and he will bring to light what is hidden in darkness, and will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God. Moving forward in Jeremiah 17 and 10, I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind. Now I'm gonna stop there to think about how important that is when it comes to the mind versus the heart. And I'm not putting each one in competition, but I want you to think of how important it is to be led with your heart. The Lord searches the heart, then he examines the mind to reward each person according to their conduct, according to what their deeds deserve. And in the Holy Quran, in the 11th Surah, verse 5, it says, behold, they fold up their hearts that they may lie hid from him. Even when they cover themselves with their garments, he knoweth what they conceal and what they reveal, for he knoweth well the inmost secrets of the hearts. And in the 28th Surah, verse 69, it says, and your Lord knows what their hearts conceal and what they will reveal. Again, this deals with certain principles in masonry and certain symbols within masonry. And we learn that we are to be upright men and masons. We are to be upright. We ought to have that rectitude of conduct. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verses 1 through 3, the Supreme Personality of the Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from anger and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. Think of each one of those qualities that I just named. You can't tell me that each one of these qualities we do not find, or what we're not trying to become when we improve ourselves in masonry. When it talks about being upright, and everything that is talked about comes from within. Self-control, that comes from within. Freedom from anger, that comes from within. From the freedom from the passion for honor, that goes at ambition again, but that comes from within. Tranquility, calmness, that comes from within. Fortitude, we all should know about fortitude. All of that comes from within and should project outward. It starts within the heart first. What we see in our heart is what we see in the person. Of course, me being a lover of music, we learned that music is intelligible to the heart. And it made me think about the story of David and Saul when when Saul was so upset and he had an evil spirit in him, and David was called, because David, as many know, David was not only a great king, but he was also a musician. And we find in 1 Samuel 16 and 23, and it came to pass when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, and that David took up an harp and played with his hand, and so Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him. Think about that. What was within him was removed from him, and he was refreshed, because we learn and understand how music can be intelligible to the heart. We learn within Masonry to revere and trust God. We learn that from the definition of speculative Freemasonry, that we pay homage to the deity, that we dedicate to him our heart, purified from every malignant passion. And we learn that when we apply to become a Mason, it asks you, who do you believe? We're asking, whom do we put our trust? Our first duty of a Mason is to God. It is said in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. And in all ways submit to him, and he will direct your path. So when we talk about the heart and being led by your heart, a lot of people again feel that you can't be led with your heart because you have to take emotions out of it. You can't deal with make a rational decision if your emotions are involved and things like that. But I tell you, there is a way that not only you should deal with it, but you must deal with it. And there's a phrase known as emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is defined as the capacity to blend thinking and feeling to make optimal decisions. It's being smarter with your feelings. And within emotional intelligence, you deal with three pursuits. Number one, self-awareness, clearly seeing what you do and feel. Number two, choice, do what you mean to do. And purpose, do it for a reason. Or as you see on the right-hand side, first know yourself, choose yourself, and give yourself. Everything has to deal with self. But the first thing you do is have to know yourself. You have to know who you are. You have to know what you're feeling and why you're feeling. And so within emotional intelligence, there are 8 emotional intelligence skills that you deal with. The first is enhancing emotional literacy, which means accurately identifying and interpreting both simple and compound feelings. How are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? What is making you feel this way? Second is to recognize patterns, acknowledging the frequency of recurring actions and behaviors. The third is apply consequential thinking, evaluating the cost and benefits of your choices. A lot of times we have a tendency to believe that if we take the emotions out of it, that we may think properly, because we feel that if we deal with our emotions and our feelings during the situation, that we will do certain things and then later on come back and say, well, had I thought about it, I would have done such and such. But it's saying here that before you make a decision, within your emotions and your feelings, evaluate the costs and the benefits of your choices. Is what you're getting ready to do going to be beneficial, or is it going to be detrimental? Something to think about. Then the fourth thing would be to navigate your emotions, assessing, harnessing, and transforming emotions as a strategic resource. Knowing what your emotions are, knowing how you feel, and how you can maneuver through them. The next is to engage intrinsic motivation, gaining energy from personal values and commitments versus being driven by external forces. That goes that internal versus external again. The next would be to exercise optimism, taking a proactive perspective of hope and possibility. The next would be to increase empathy, recognizing and connecting with appropriate and responding to emotions. And finally, to pursue noble goals, connecting your daily choices with your overarching sense of purpose. So why do we choose emotional intelligence? Why is it important? It is said that without the guidance of emotional learning and social feedback, rational thought and logical reasoning abilities are of little use. Emotions are the motivator, the push. They provide the oomph. To know that a decision is risky is one thing, but to feel the anxiety and appropriate fear associated with the risk is taking quite another. And it's the difference that makes the difference when it comes to decision making. One of the pictures I love to use comes from the Bhagavad Gita, and that is the picture of the horses and the chariot. You have the 5 horses representing your 5 senses. You have the reins of the horse representing your mind, the driver of the chariot representing your intellect, the chariot itself representing your body, and the passenger of the chariot, which is your soul. And basically what it's showing is that if you do not have proper control of the reins, if you don't have proper control of the horses, those being your senses, because a lot of times when you get ready to make those decisions, or when your emotions are involved, your emotions become involved by what you see, by what you hear, by what you smell, is by your senses. So when it says we need to come to your senses, if you don't have control of those reins, just imagine where those horses are leading you and the decisions that you make, and then you come back and you use your intellect to say, you know what, had I thought about it, I would have did such and such. So when you're actually led properly by your senses, by your emotions, you can make those proper decisions. So as I conclude this evening, it is said by Walter Russell that the great unanswered question of man has a simple answer. The silent voice within every man is ceaselessly whispering to its awakening conscience. Every desire written upon the heart of man is carried to the source, and its answer will come. But few there are who ask comprehensively, and still fewer who will hear. James Allen also said that as the reaper of his own harvest learns both by suffering and bliss, a man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime by stress or any mere external forces. The criminal thought had long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. Circumstances does not make the man, it reveals him to himself. So when we understand that those things are already there, like in the lessons of 10, you're talking about the left part of the heart versus the right part of the heart. We have to understand that in order to improve ourselves, we have to first improve our heart first. And in order to improve, and when we improve our heart, we'll be able to improve our way of thinking, because what's in the heart will transfer into our thoughts. Or as it is said, the mind replays what the heart can't delete. To my brothers, to the audience, I pray that you have enjoyed this lecture. I thank you for the greatest gift that you could give me, which is your time, because that is something that you cannot get back. God bless you all. So more be.
Hey, before AK gets in there and Mike starts going in, literally I'm Googling like as you're going, I'm pulling up stuff. So I have like 8 tabs open. So yeah, you know where our conversation is gonna go after this. But again, phenomenal lecture here, sir, and I appreciate you. So yeah, let's get it cracking, man. I'm excited.
I want to say, first of all, go ahead.
I say I don't even know where to start. Because he went all in, totally all in, and I'm just amazed. I'm just sit back and listen for a little bit.
I had looked at what you were talking about when we talked about the Bhagavad Gita and the heart and things like that, and one of the things that kind of stuck out was that toroidal field that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expound on that? Because I know that does exist, and they say that, hypothetically speaking, that the earth underneath the surface does emanate that same field. Do you think that that's what resonates within us on the surface as individuals?
I think I think so. I think, we are all, connected to God's creation. And I think through, that the toroidal field, we're all, connected to, to nature, in some, form or fashion. And it's really in a way of how, you know, how we can basically come back to ourselves and really understand ourselves in order to connect. We learn throughout masonry that we have to contemplate the creation from the divine creator. And when we think about it, we are all connected in some form or fashion. And so I believe that with that, toroidal field, and understanding that, again, the first organ that's developed in the fetus is the heart. So when we think about that, and everything comes from the inside out, everything that you need is right there in the heart. So when you think about it, when you think about just think about how you feel about somebody, and how that feeling, makes you get to a point of what you think about them, where your thoughts come from your feelings. We have a tendency of believing that, we have to separate the two, but as it says, what comes out of a person, what you see, from that person basically is coming from within that person. So when it comes to what, the toroidal field, all of us have an energy. We learn that, whether we learn it through the our hermetic principles and the principles of polarity, the principles of vibration. One of my favorite principles within the hermetic principle is the principles of vibration. As I said, when we always use that phrase, I don't vibe with that person. Well, why are you not vibing that person? What type of energy is that person giving off? What vibration is that person giving off for you not to feel that person, or not to vibe with that person? So, and automatically that's a connection, because the energies don't match, right? You think about how this show has been working for as long as it has been, because your energies match, right? So just imagine what happens when you have someone who throws that energy off. Well, what happens. And so that all comes from, once again, and learning that the toroidal field is and of the heart is more powerful than the brain. Then that makes you understand that, the heart is where we're all connected, and we just have to get to that point where we have that understanding. More of a, it reminds me of the definition of brotherly love. So
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. We have one question here. It says, as Masons, what methods can we employ to become more in tune with the internal and limit the influence of external actions or factors?
well, I mean, it's I think everything is in plain sight, and what I mean by plain sight, it's right there in your ritual. Think about the working tool that you're given to in order to break off those vices and superfluities. Where are you breaking it off at? You're breaking it off in the heart, so that your mind can be that fitting stone. You're not doing it in your mind, you're doing it in your heart first. When you look at that, you have to look inward, within yourself. And again, I think it's one thing that's touched on briefly, but it's not talked about enough, and that's your senses. Your senses, in my opinion, your senses are what really drives your feelings and your emotions. If you see something if you don't like, if you hear something, that you don't like, a prime example, I remember, hearing a rumor uh about myself, something that wasn't true. And automatically, when you hear something, the first thing that you want to do is you want to dead that rumor. And so you go, you do certain things that, you're sitting here making decisions, and you're trying to squash this rumor. and not realizing that the more you're doing stuff, the more you feel like you have to defend yourself, the more, upset, you get. And so as I heard this, particular rumor, I felt immediately that I needed to do something, but instead I decide, I think about that, that horse and carriage, and I'm like, that horse and chariot, I said, let me control this, let me be still. Let me be still and let me not do anything. Because if I do something, I'm giving power to the rumor, So sometimes when we hear something, we're quick to do something, and we don't tend to think or reason first. And it's not necessarily thinking with the mind, but thinking with the heart, because when we hear it, automatically we're upset. So we're, first of all, not acknowledging the fact that we're upset. What is it that's upsetting us? Why? So what is the first, what is the best course of action? And I think a lot of times we feel that because it's an emotion, we feel that, we want to get rid of the emotion in order to make a logical decision. But if you know yourself enough to know what your emotion is and how you can handle that emotion, then you will be able to make a much better, once again, the process and the influence. If you understand the process that led to you being upset, you can understand the capacity in what you could use to make the best possible decision.
All right, great, great, great. Another question was, are we given the working tools to assist in expanding our emotional intelligence?
Oh, I got it, bro. I got an answer for that. Go ahead, Jack. I'm coming in right after you.
Say that one more time, because that was I like that. Say that one more time.
Are we given the working tools to assist in expanding our emotional intelligence?
I believe that we're given the tools, but we're not given the instruction on how to use them. If you think about it, the tools are, the explanation of the tools are basically what they're used for, but you're not given the instruction on how to use them. I gotta give credit to Worship Master Stephen Witherspoon on that, and it makes perfect sense, because each of us are going to use the tool in a different way. There's no standard on how we're going to use the tool, because first of all, everybody has a different passion. Everybody has a different vice. Everybody has a different superfluity. So it's going to be used different. We're all still walking towards that, that level of time. But what does being upright mean to you? What does standing on your square mean to you? How do you, square your own actions? We're all not cookie cutters. Everyone is different. So we're given that. I think there's some things, again, that are not taught enough. Once again, like the senses. I don't believe the senses are really taught enough. And like I said, the lesson that I use that comes from the Bhagavad Gita with the picture of the horse and chariot. Like, I love that picture, and I love that symbolism, because it really, really breaks down really where our motivation and our emotions come from. If we anybody in here, if you come into the house and something's not smelling right, like you automatically snapping up, like, where's that coming from? I'm gonna be nice because I could use other language, but you know what I'm talking about. So and again, if you hear something, if you just like if you go to a restaurant and you taste something, so a lot of times our emotions are derived from our senses. And so we talk about the senses, but we don't necessarily talk about how important they are. And so we have to have that control of the senses. Like the Bhagavad Gita states that our lust, that a lot of our lust comes from our senses. and from the mind. And so if we have to have a, control in order to subdue the self. We have to subdue the self by the self. What is the self that we're subduing? We're subduing the senses, the mind, and the intellect by the self, which is the soul. So in order to do that, you have to have as what they call an attachment of the senses. Free yourself from the attachment of the senses, and know that your senses are sometimes going to lead you down that road that you don't want to be on, and it's going to lead you to those emotions and things like that. So I believe that we're given the tools, but how you use them is going to be up to you.
So, Stephen Barrett, you had some thoughts, sir?
Yes.
I'm gonna follow you.
I'm a firm believer that everything that's taught is found in the 7 liberal arts and sciences. I feel if you go through that process, I believe at some point you'll knock through everything. It might not happen right away, but if you go through, like I said, and you start from the beginning, work your way all the way up, at some point you'll touch on something. It might take you 20 years, but I think all the secrets of masonry into this world is contained within those 7 things. That's my firm belief. Yeah, so we do have it. We just don't know how to use it, just like Pastor Master Jack said. But yeah, go ahead, Williams.
Yeah, I just want to touch on, like, he was talking about the senses again and the chariot. So when you talk about the senses and the chariot, in some of our other discussions, we talked about the Merkaba, and the Merkaba also falling in line with the senses, and then with that, we'll talk about the Sephirot Tifereth, which is the heart chakra, being right in the center of the Merkaba or the chariot. That's the same as Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And, so I see all the similarities as you're talking about the Bhagavad Gita and the similarities with what the Zohar speaks in reference to Kabbalah and the work of the chariot. Also, the other thing, when you think about the senses and emotions, when you walk in a room, and say, for instance, somebody's in that room and there is anger, and you feel that heat from that anger. First place you're feeling that heat is in the center of your chest, and you're like overwhelmed. You start getting heat, and that toroidal field starts spiraling out. And what happens is you have negative toroidal fields bouncing against each other. And the more negative toroidal fields you have in one room, the more conflict you have. When you see that, that's when you have wars. That's why we have all this stuff. We have a lot of negative toroidal fields fighting because of imbalanced energy. So those are other topics. But as you can see, the toroidal field plays a lot on the aspects of human nature and human psyche. Not only does that affect the humans, but the entire planet. As you can see, it's all in turmoil. I mean, the nature fights back. We don't realize it because we think it's nature, and we're humans and we can control nature. But nature's fighting back, and it fights back through its toroidal field. We have those things we call hurricanes, those cyclone fields, earthquakes. What are earthquakes? Earthquakes is plate tectonic shifts. Plate tectonic shifts is the toroidal field of the earth folded in on itself. Those shifts are the fields cracking and rubbing against each other. So the toroidal vector, it's everywhere throughout pretty much everything in existence. If you take an apple and you cut an apple in half, you see the seeds of the fruit. It has a picture of like a Merkaba or a 6-pointed hexagram, but it also folds in on itself. As you look at the stem at the top and the bottom, that is a toroidal field. Oranges have the exact same thing. Pine cones, the exact same thing. The same toroidal field is found within everything in nature. So the toroidal energy is basically the life force of, or how our active, how conscious. What I'm trying to say is the activity of consciousness is put in motion through the toroidal field, through the heart. So the mind and the heart working together through the toroidal field.
It's amazing that you talk about walking into a room and the different toroidal fields. I say about 10 years ago or 13 years ago, I was working at a particular job, and so every morning when we go in, going through the employee entrance, and we look through the door, there was a dry erase board on the wall. And so on that wall, it would tell you what your assignment was on that day, what unit you were going into, and who you were going to work with. And so I remember, going in certain mornings and everybody looking through the door, and they're looking at the assignment, where they're going, who they're going to be with. And I mean, the amount of negativity that came from the assignment that they were given. And I found myself, and this is like, we're starting work at 7. This is like 10 minutes to 7. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. And the amount of negativity that flowed was tremendous, to the point where I found myself going on to the unit and being negative just because of what I felt, what I heard. And so what I started to do was, every morning I would go in with earbuds in my ear, and I would play whatever music I felt like playing that morning. I didn't listen to what was going on around me. I didn't care what was going on around me. I looked at my assignment, and I kept it moving, and it kept my energy where I had it before I stepped in. Because many times I come in, feeling good, ready to go. And I noticed that 7:05, I'm just feeling, I don't even want to be here. It's just because of that small 10 minutes that I was in this room, full of negativity. So I know that in order for me to keep my energy, I had to block out the noise, block out the negative energy. And that was my way of doing so.
Yeah. And the same thing works with the positive energy and positive toroidal fields as well. So like, for example, I don't know how I do it, but when I go to work, like sometimes I'll walk in the room, somebody is sad, and I can change, and I'm good at it. You bring that energy in, and you bring positive energy into a room, and you can lighten up and brighten up a person's entire day with your positive toroidal field as well. I pride myself at that. I don't smile a lot at work, but I try to make other people smile. So when you talk about work and esotericism, these things, what we're doing, and we can apply them to our day-to-day vocations. And you said, you mentioned working tools and how we use the working tools differently. So these are how we can use these working tools. Those 8, 8, and 8, 8, 8, and 8 can be divided so many different ways.
Mhm.
So that clarity of divesting your time in God, divesting your time in charity and things like that, that is bringing that positive toroidal field into another room into somebody's life when they're having a downtime, bringing that positive energy in there. Just I'm doing a lot of stuff, a lot of training on resiliency right now. So the resiliency training has me thinking on how to positively improve the work-life balance of my employees, especially in where we're coming from post-COVID, or still COVID, but COVID and all the calamities that are going on in the world right now. So trying to keep teams together, not only in work and but in the lodge as well. We have to bring in positive energy. So what are you doing to boost up your toroidal field? What are you doing to work on your heart, to make your heart better? Where's your love at? Are you loving your wife right? Or are you loving, if you don't have a wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever it is, your pets, is there somebody to love you? And are you giving love back to boost your toroidal field? Boost the positive
Man,
energy in that field.
you hit a. I'm sorry, Jim. I just thought about what you said, Mike, about the MRT, massive resiliency training. And I thought about the word icebergs and knowing what your triggers and knowing your trigger mechanisms as you know, one of my vices coming through was anger. And especially being from up north, you know, Jack knows we're in our neighborhood. That's what we're taught, how to deal with emotions. And you're weak if you don't handle this a certain type of way. And especially in our craft, we got to understand these brothers that we're bringing through come with that. And it takes for you to be that plumb line for them and understand that being an upright man. And that takes first divesting your heart or that metal or that iron, divesting your heart and your what's the name, and emptying yourself so that you may be filled. But you first gotta empty first. You gotta destroy, then rebuild. Anything that we've come through in life, you have to destroy and rebuild first. And I thought about everything that you were saying tonight. The presentation was just beautiful, and emotional intelligence, especially for leaders, is extremely important because you can't effectively lead something you don't know.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
like, you cannot effectively lead something you don't know. Are you building a relationship with these people you're building it? Sometimes it takes a brother that come from the street. He might need you to be a coach to him. Somebody might need you to be directive to him. Some might need a transactional thing. But the biggest one, and my brother Barry on here, you lead by inspiration and being an inspirational leader.
And
And
inspiration comes from the heart.
it gotta come from the heart. And that's where you first, as you said, that's where we're first made. But sometimes we have to understand that that comes for us to be humble, to be low, and to understand that your truth is not your truth. My perspective is not your perspective. We come from different places. So how you handle something might be different from the way I handle it. And that's where I think that emotional intelligence comes from, and the tools that we get, that we have. Something as simple as a plumb line. Do you want to be a plumb line for others? Do you want to be that tool so that somebody else can follow? That eventually they'll become a leader, because all leaders started as followers. I mean, no matter what general, anything that any person or any significant person in history, you had to start from the bottom first. You can't maintain up here if you never went through the process to get up there. Because if you reach up here, if you never went through this middle ground, it's funny how we say the middle ground again, because we have two pillars, but in that middle ground, if you never experienced that, you won't be able to maintain this. Because if I hit you here and I bring you back down, but if you went through the process of getting up, then you can come right back up here. But if you just shot up without the process, it's going to be difficult for you to get back up there to where you were at. So I thought about so many different things in this presentation, and it definitely was an eye opener, sir.
You know, Brother Bailey, the same thing goes into teaching. I tell my I am and I assist my brother in teaching and in my lodge. And you know, the phrase break down to build up used to get on my nerves. And I'm next month will be 23 years that I've been me being an alpha, and that's when I learned about breaking down to build up, and I didn't understand that, but as you explain it, I definitely understand it now. It kind of reminds me of when we bring in new members, like you said, we're bringing in new personalities, and one of the things that I like to use, one of my double brothers back in Pennsylvania, he's a pastor, and he would always say whenever he gets ready to give a sermon and he gives a prayer, one of the final things that he will always say, now move Tucker out of the way. and what he meant by that is, remove me out of the way so that I can give what it is I need to teach. Remove myself out of the way. And I think in teaching, you definitely have to do that, understanding that you're at a certain level and you're trying to bring people to a certain level, and that's going to take a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice, and you have to have the heart, to do it. Like the phrase goes, the matters of the heart are not for the faint-hearted. And I remember there was a brother who was in class, and automatically go to senses again. Looking at him, he was there, but he wasn't there. And just by looking at him, I had the feeling of where I just wanted to say, listen, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. But I took a step back, and instead of me saying that, I said, whatever it is that is eating at you today, you need to express that, and you need to release that, because I see that you're here, but you're not here. Now, just by sight alone, my emotions would have taken me to a totally different direction, not realizing, like you said, that iceberg, you see what's going on, but you don't know what's going on underneath. And working in behavioral health, working in behavioral health for over 20 years, I always look at that. I don't look at the behavior. I ask the question, why? Why is this person doing what they're doing? And so because I was able to ask why, we were able to have a conversation. And so that would be my thing, for teachers. You have to remove yourself out of the way. It's when it comes to, when it comes to teaching, and understand when you bring new people in, it's going to be, that process starts all over again. And so you then have to take time for self. I was joking with my brother, when we get done with this class, they're going to be raised pretty soon. I said, man, we're going to have to take a break, for a little bit. It reminds me of the movie, Gridiron Gang, when they start all over again. It's like, you guys can't spell Mustangs, you know what I'm saying? And that's what, that's what what it feels like when when you start all over. But you definitely have to remove yourself, out the way. What your not necessarily your thoughts and your feelings, but be able to ask the question why, and don't be so quick to jump, because it took you time to get here. And so, in order for you to pull someone up, it's going to take them time to do so as well.
All right. We're coming to almost the 90-minute mark, brothers. This is good conversation. Mike, you had something you want to add before we close out?
No, it got too good. I had a question I wanted to ask like 5 minutes ago, but for the sake of time, I'm not gonna ask.
Okay. All right. Any last remarks, Brother Michael Bailey?
I'll just leave it with a quote that I created for my lodge. Just plant seeds for trees whose shade you would never sit in. It really ain't about us. It's what you leave, what legacy you leaving, and who you here to help. Are you a help or a hindrance? And that's really the bottom line to me. And thank you again for this one, sir. This was an eye opener for me.
Good stuff. Any last remarks, Brother Michael Williams?
Yeah. Again, Brother Jack, thank you for Pastor Master Jack for gracing us with your presence tonight. And awesome lecture. You got me thinking about a lot of things about the heart and the mind, and just leading with the heart, and the concept of leading with the heart versus the mind. And I tend to be a little bit more stoic, so I try not to focus on the heart. So it's a great narrative for me to research and to think about a little bit more. So I appreciate it.
Good stuff. I'll go, and then Damien Jack, you can close us out with any last remarks. As I was listening, there were a couple of things that came to my mind. And one of them is, when we look at a battery, there's a positive and a negative. And in anything, there's always a balance to conduct any type of energy. And what I'm leading up is to, we must, when we look at how we come into the lodge and we meet on the level, act on the plumb and part on the square, that is about energy and frequency in our words, thoughts, and our actions. Anything that we do, say, and act with one another to brother. We must always remember that everything has a frequency and energy associated with it. From inception, our cells, our atoms are all moving. And those cells that create our heart, they actually are creating a frequency to create that heart, to create an electrical charge, to cause life to live. So as I begin to listen to everything that was being said, our heart is where everything centers around this entire universe, because it is literally the heart of the matter. And everything that we know and see today, as Brother Mike Williams said to us. So I will leave everybody with this thought, is that emotional intelligence is a key thing to have, not just of those around you and yourself, but also of yourself. Know yourself and you will know others. Okay. All right. Thank you. Brother Damien Jack, you can close us out, sir.
Yes, sir. To the panelists of the Esoteric Lighthouse, I want to thank you for the blessing, the honor, and the opportunity to be before you this evening, and to be able to provide this presentation for you and for the audience. Is something that I don't take lightly. Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Definitely look forward to coming back another time. Thank you to the audience. And I say this: when we talk about the heart and understanding the heart, and we talk about, you know, anything that we do, anything that we want to do in life, you know, we first have to be prepared in our heart. You know, when we talk about having the will to do something, that will comes from that comes from the heart. You know, a lot of times you have those who say we take certain things too seriously. We don't, you know, lighten up enough. But you know, if it's in your heart, you're going to take things to heart. And like the old classic song from Atlantic Star said, if your heart isn't in it, then why would you do it? You know. So I do pray this evening that you understand more the importance of the heart, and how prayerfully you can be led by the heart. Again, thank you for the greatest time that you could ever give me, and that's your time, because that's something that you can't get back. And I pray that you all have a blessed evening.
All right. Thank you. And good night.